Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and now we're doing entrepreneurship and managing a small business. So, in entrepreneurship, we're on P4, and P4 says explain the importance of small business and small business startups to the growth of the social economy. So, we know that explain is a key word, and explain means to go into more detail. So what is the next thing that we need to find out and talk about before we can move into the question?
Identify what social economy is.
Yeah, to look at what the social economy is. And when we look at the social economy, what we're saying is that the UK economy is broken down into three main sectors. The UK's economy is broken down into the public sector. Someone give me some examples of the public organisations, please. NHS, defence, social services, fire, TFL. Okay, and then we have the private sector. And in the private sector, what type of companies do we have?
Profits.
Sorry.
Private.
Private limited liability.
And
Public liability. What else?
Partnerships.
Partnerships.
Sole traders.
And sole traders. Good. We have limited liability and non-limited liability companies. And limited liability limits the liability of the debts to the company and not to the individual in the main. So that if someone borrowed £10,000 and you had limited liability and the company went bankrupt, then the bailiffs can only come in and take the company's goods. But as a sole trader and partnership, if you borrowed £10,000 and your company went bust, the bailiffs could come in after going to court and then come to your own home and take your goods and your services, and take your TV, your carpet, your car. You can take all of that. Your wife, if you want to, you can take all of that away. So that's the difference between limited liability companies and non-limited. And then the third sector that we have is the social enterprise sector. Now, the social enterprise sector consists of what type of organisations? So Oxfam, which is a what type of organisation? A voluntary organisation, a non-profit type organisation. And now, organisations like Oxfam and NSPCA and Cancer Research, non-profit organisations, still have limited liability. But their limited liability is limited liability which is guaranteed, which means they don't have shareholders and they don't have equity in the company. They have trustees. So they have trustees from a board of people which appoint these trustees in these places. And then we also have social enterprises within the social enterprise sector. The social enterprises are companies which have limited liability. Now, these companies, they differ from the private sector limited liability companies in terms of their memorandum of association. According to the Companies Act 2006, it states that you must do various things to become a limited liability company. You must complete a memorandum of association, articles of association, statement of compliance, list of shareholders in the company and their equity, list of directors and officers in the company, registration document, and other documents. But the difference between a limited company in the private sector and a limited company in the social enterprise sector is that in their memorandum of association, in the social enterprise sector, it states their social mission, their social aims and objectives of what they want to achieve. And in the private sector, they don't have social aims and objectives in the memorandum of association. Do you see the difference? Now, when we're talking about the social sector, we can talk about economy. And what is an economy? The economy is all about the consumptions of goods and services. So when we talk about the social economy, we're talking about the goods and services that are represented in the social economy. And when we're looking at this, we can see that the social economy is represented in over 50% in four main areas. These areas include education, business support and consultancy, employment and skills, and retail. So when we talk about the social enterprise economy, we're talking about the growth of over 50% in 4 main industries, including education, business support, employment, and retail. Okay? So this is what we mean by the social economy. So we're clearly defining it. But we must still go back to the question and say to ourselves, well, the question says, explain the importance of small businesses and business startups to the growth of the social economy. So we know various things. We know that the social economy has over 70,000 social enterprises, according to government statistics. We know from those 70,000 social enterprises, they bring in a turnover 24 billion. 24 billion. And from those businesses, 76% of those businesses either make a profit, 50%, or break even, 26%. So 76%. And we can see how this is split regionally. We can see that in Scotland, there are over 5,000 social enterprises in Scotland from the 70,000. And we can see that this brings in 3.6 billion. If we're looking in terms of Wales, we can see in Wales, social enterprises in Wales bring in approximately 1.7 billion. So from the 24 billion, if you deduct 3.6 billion from Scotland and 1.7 billion from Wales, basically at least over 18 billion of turnover comes from England. Okay? And the vast majority of social enterprises are in England because there are 5,000 in Scotland and a smaller amount in Wales. So at least 62,000 social enterprises exist in England itself. 5,000 in Scotland and a small amount in Wales. So we know these figures exist. So we know that the social economy is important. But how do we link the growth of the social economy to small businesses and business startups? Well, we have to really define what we mean by business startups and small businesses. So how would we define what we mean by a business startup?
We can define it as a micro business.
Yes.
Someone with 9 employees.
Yes.
Turnover of 26.
Perfect. So we could see a business startup as a micro business. You're just starting up. And a micro business, according to the government, can be defined in one of two ways. Either a turnover of up to 2 million or from 0 to 9 employees. So then, using the government's way of defining businesses, how would we define a small business?
Define it by the amount of employees.
From what to what? How many employees?
From 10 to
9 to 49.
10,
10 to 49.
10 to 49. Good. Or turnover from what to what?
2 to 9 million.
2 to 9 million. So if we were looking at a small organisation, then we can define it in one of two ways. Either by the number of employees, from 10 to 49 employees, or from 2+ million to 9 million pounds. Okay? So now we know the boundaries in terms of what we're looking for. So now we need to get access and data to say, what is the importance of these small businesses and the business startups to the social economy that we've defined earlier? So what is the importance using this information available here?
You can see that the majority of the small and the micro businesses are accounting for the contribution of the social economy.
Yes.
The percentage and the
Yes.
rate they have into that economy.
Yes, absolutely, and this is the key, because this table shows us that up to 84%, up to 1 million turnover, from 0 to 1 million pounds, 84% of the businesses represent social enterprises, which are representative of small organisations, defined as small. Okay. Micro, defined as being micro. So up to 1 million turnover, we can classify 84% of social enterprises. Up to 1 million turnover, 84% of them are business startups or micro businesses. If we look at the next category, from 1 million to 5 million, small organisations, we can see that the majority of this represents 10%, which 10% of small organisations. We're discounting the last figure of over 5 million, even though it kind of overlaps into a small organisation, because we don't know. It doesn't say how much over the 5 million. We don't know if it's 10 million, 11 million, or 9 million. We just don't know, so we're discounting it. But what we can say, if we take the business startups and the small together combined, which is 84% for business startups and 10% for small, we can see business startups and small enterprises represents 94% of social enterprises in the social economy. Therefore, small businesses and business startups are absolutely crucial to the growth of the social enterprise, because in order to get more growth, you need more what? More small enterprises and more micro enterprises. So the greater the growth is going to be dependent upon the growth in micro and small enterprises in that sector. Okay, so we can see the importance of that. So when we're looking at it, and then going back full circle, we know that these 94% of social enterprises represented by small and micro businesses, 50% are seen in education.